The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
I just got back from a pretty disastrous trip to Copenhagen. And if you've met me in real life, which I'm sorry if you have, but if you've met me in real life, you'll know that the year that I spent living there was the best year of my life. Or at least that's what I used to say. I lived there when I was about 19, 20 years old. I had some really formative experiences. The friends I met in that city were the first group of friends that I really thought, I just love you guys. I think you guys are so cool. And I really do not understand why you like me. I was, for context, very deep in my anorexia at that point. It was that summer, about 2018, where everybody said there is no place in the world right now that is as cool as Copenhagen. And I felt it. I felt like I had finally arrived at my main character moment and didn't want to be anywhere else. And these people around me, who I thought were just so cool, were giving me a slight insight into this feeling that, hey, if they see value in me, then maybe I do have inherent worth, which was something I was really struggling with at the time. And I will always be grateful to them for making me feel that way. Having said that, every time I've been back to Copenhagen since then, and that was usually like once a year, I have struggled so much. There's not a single trip where I haven't cried or had some sort of mental breakdown or been triggered by something, and I just couldn't understand it. I thought, God, I wish I could just get back to that feeling that I had that summer. Is it because I'm just not that girl anymore, or there's something wrong with me? But the truth is, that happens all the time. Maybe it's a weight, or it's a place, or it's a person. Something that you romanticize so much that you genuinely believe that that was like the best version of yourself. And if you could just get back to that thing, you'll be happy again. And the things I learned about that experience really informed the conversation that we were going to be listening to today between myself and my co-host, Maria. It's about that shame that you have when you fail at something. It's about that shame that you have when you're trying to cover up the fact that you are unhappy and that you're struggling. Because in truth, when I got back to Copenhagen, I didn't just realize that I was having like a reasonably miserable time at that moment. I realized that that year, the year that I said was the best year of my life, was actually one of the worst. I was so unwell. I was so incredibly anxious. I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to be, or even if I wanted to be alive. And yet I had rose tinted it because it looked and felt like the person I wanted to be. So we're going to be talking a lot about my thoughts and feelings from this period of my life. I was anorexic at the time, and it certainly wasn't a fun or pretty period of existence for me, but it informed so much about my opinion on my eating disorder today. So if you feel like that is not a conversation that you are ready for right now, no pressure. Jump out of it, rejoin us when you feel ready. Maybe there's some other content that will do better for you. If you feel like this is actually something that you want to hear, we're going to jump straight into the second episode of Second Helpings. So it was weird because I both was like a very confident person and also just like dying inside all the time, especially when it came to making friends. So I think I often think of the fact that I have friends now that are like friends from 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I think, what a fucking miracle, because I honestly did not think that would ever be possible for me.
Really?
Yeah, just...
That's not the impression I had when I met you.
And I think that's the point. I think that's the point, is that masked constantly, and I was pretending that everything was fine.
Hmm.
And I think in many ways that's why I was so obsessed with trying to be thin and trying to be perfect and always look perfect, and it was because I just felt like the likelihood of people wanting to be my friend was so low that I had to really overcompensate, which is completely nuts. To think about that now is completely nuts.
Why do you think it's completely nuts to think about that now?
Well, I think my opinion of myself has changed profoundly.
Okay, so like having that kind of like thought at 22, I've already ruined my life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty, like I'm just trying to imagine myself even in, thinking that, like, how do you move on from that, if that makes sense? Like, how do you
Oh,
even,
God.
because it's so damning. It's not really hopeful, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to square one. I wanted to like hit the reset button and be like, okay, can I just get like the last 10 years back and I will not make these mistakes? And then slowly I think I realized that, the recovery process is not fun. It's not an attractive period of one's life. Like you feel like shit, you look like shit. And I'm not going to dress that up for people. I'm not going to be like, oh no, you're beautiful, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a fuck how I looked to other people, but I did not feel great. I did not feel like myself. It felt like going through another puberty almost. Like it's that kind of feeling of dislocation. But I think what that made me realize is I had to stop relying on certain things. Like stop relying on always being right, or stop relying on my defense mechanisms, or stop relying on looking a certain way, or I don't know.
But did you get that insight from yourself, or did someone have to like point that out to you that you're relying on these things and that might be, upholding?
I think a lot of people in my life pointed out like certain things at different times. Definitely my female friends would sort of say to me, I remember there was one incident where I got really drunk, like way too drunk in my last year of uni, which was very unusual for me. And I probably didn't even drink that much. It was just like my body weight was so low that I just couldn't handle it. And I had like a really bad like panic attack and started telling these girls who I kind of knew, kind of didn't know that well. And I sort of was like, I'm so sorry this is happening. I'll calm down in a second. But like, I just sort of started pouring my heart out to them and saying like, I'm trying to be perfect all the time. And I can't deal with it anymore. And I feel like I've had this eating disorder now. I think at that point I'd been going for about 6 years. And they all kind of were just like, they were aghast. They were so shocked. They couldn't believe it. They were like, God, we wish you'd told us this, 4 years ago when we first met, because like we just thought you were this ice queen who didn't have time for us, that kind of thing. And that was a real wake-up call, because I thought, okay, well, if you're doing this to make friends and be liked, then it's not working. So when I started going into recovery, I was trying to think like, okay, well, you've tried not being yourself. Why don't you just try being yourself? Why don't you just try being completely, and I hate this word, but like just being completely authentic all the time? Because then at the very least, people will be like, they'll never be able to call you that again. They'll never be able to say that you're like being an ice queen or holding back or being shady or inauthentic. And then that was so liberating, because I realized that I actually do have a really fun personality and that people do like me. And I used to think that like I would just never have female friends, and that's just fundamentally untrue. And I think when I crossed the threshold of having friends that were like, we have known each other and liked each other for 5 years, that was a huge moment for me, because that was, I'd never had that before in a healthy way, if that makes sense. And also those friends wanting to come and like visit me, like come and do fun things with me, or invite me to their places and hang out, and just like simple things like that. I was like, fuck, I never thought that was actually going to be possible. Also the drinking helped, but
and
like the healthy drinking, the healthy glass of Chardonnay every now and again definitely helped a lot. But I think it was that kind of allowing friends and allowing messiness and all this kind of stuff back into my life that was the profound shift.
Allowing messiness back into your life.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of messiness beforehand? Like, what was that, part of it, trying to have some sort of control in a mess, or what's...
Well, I don't know if you see this like very much in your clinical experience, but I think when you're younger, you just simply cannot deal with the crazy shit that goes on in life. The demands on you, your personal relationships, your ability to control your own emotions, just random domestic things like paying bills and all this kind of stuff. And I think that starts quite early. It starts probably for a lot of people 14, 15, when they have to start thinking about exams and their parents are being annoying as fuck and friends at school are really pissing them off or they're getting bullied or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just think that we are not prepared for that kind of stuff. We're expected to be, or we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be fully formed and fully capable at like 15 years old, 16 years old, especially as girls. I think we're told, if you want boys to like you and you to have friends and to be popular, you've got to have it all together. And this is like before even like social media and TikTok as well. Yeah. So I can't even imagine.
I feel like that exacerbates it, to be honest. Like
I can't imagine. And I think as I just got older, I realized that chaos is actually something that I built up a resiliency to be able to deal with.
And I mean, like when you were saying, like, and if I see it in my clinical work, I really do. Exactly what you're describing here. Because I work with like, teenagers and children. And so often, see it like more in starting phases of this. But it's usually related to not being able to handle the mess that starts coming up in life as we get older and go into like teenagehood. And so, I don't work specifically with eating disorders. That's not my like domain, but oftentimes I feel like my job is kind of like being that older sister in a way for a lot of these kids and just making them realize or helping them realize that you don't have to have all your shit in order. Like you'll be fine and you are fine.
Do you think that ever actually goes through? Because I always felt like if people told me that, I would look at them and go, you're fucking lying to me. Like, I just don't believe you. I always thought that my eating disorder was like my superhero talent. It meant that I could be productive and I could keep my shit together. And, when boys rejected me, it was like, fine. And
yeah, I think it really, really depends. For some people, yes, I have experienced that it actually goes through. But other times, no, it doesn't go through, frustratingly enough. But yeah, so then obviously it's like different ways to work around it. And as you say, can be a very frustrating and not fun process from what I've witnessed. But I haven't really done the specific like eating disorder treatments that we do where I work.
Well, the thing is, I didn't either, right?
Okay.
Like I never did inpatient. I have had a lot of therapy. I've had probably about 5 or 6 therapists at this point.
Yeah.
Only 2 of them were specifically ED related therapists.
Okay.
Others were through the university. They were more generalists. Others I employed privately. And truthfully, I don't necessarily think that my experiences of therapy produced any particular breakthroughs. I think what they did is they made me very, very good at being able to articulate to other people exactly how I feel, which is an invaluable skill. Because if your parents are staring at you being like, why is this happening to you? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And you just go, shut up, you'll never understand. Then like that relationship will start to break down.
Yeah.
And my relationships are strong, I think, because I went to therapy and I worked out how to communicate and sort of, I wonder what you think of this, but it certainly gave me the tools in order to help other people find a place where they were able to communicate with me as well.
Okay, in what way?
Well, it wasn't a one-sided thing. So if I felt like my mum was being reactive or my brother in a different situation was not communicating with my mom and things like that, or stuff to do with just like generally my relationships, thinking to myself, like, why is this going so badly wrong? Like, is there a way, like, what am I doing? And but the thing is, like, centering everything as being about yourself is so limiting. And I think in therapy, I was like, oh, I can't fix this problem for you, but what I can do is I can give you maybe some suggestions, or I could do certain things to make it easier for you to meet me in the middle. And so I do just genuinely think that therapy was like a toolkit for me. It didn't, I think, give me the, help my recovery specifically.
No.
But it helped my life in general.
Do you reckon that working on your relationships or getting the tools to help you in that regard might have helped you in terms of your recovery, or at least, aided that in some way? I have a very specific reason why I'm asking this, but yeah, I want to hear your answer first.
Absolutely.
What's your thought about that?
That's a great question. I would say yes overall, because it meant that I had a really great support network. And what people often say about eating disorders, it is kind of like a little secret that you have.
Yeah.
A very private thing that you have within yourself that nobody else understands, right? And basically my, I guess you could say, trajectory was like orthorexia into like a couple months of bulimia, straight into anorexia for like 4 or 5 years, and then out of anorexia into just the worst version of the first thing, like the orthorexia again. And it just sucked. It just sucked. And that's the thing, is like, if you say to yourself, oh, I don't do that anymore, I'm fine, it's just evolved into something else. And I think that's the key differentiator to like my experience of having an ED for 10 years versus somebody who's maybe had it for 1 or 2 years, is I'm just kind of like, wow, like my fucked up behaviors have evolved as I've grown up. And it makes it very hard to untangle those from who you are and who your conceptions of who you are.
Yeah, especially after such a long time. Yeah, I'm sure it's, as you say, like it's hard to untangle it from who you are. Do you feel like you can at this point? Like, do you?
That's such a good question.
Right? Because it's like after,
That's such a good question.
It's been like a companion for so many years, if that makes sense.
That's like asking you, can you untangle being Norwegian? Can you untangle being a singer, an actor? Can you untangle going to Edinburgh University? Like all of these things that informed who you are. I think when I was trying to, like, as I say, I went through that stage where I was just trying to press the restart button, or I was praying that at some point I could press the restart button. Like, could I get new bowels? Could I get new bones? Like all this stuff that I fucked up. I was like, can I just get a new version and go back to the beginning? And I think it feels like we're jumping around the timeline a lot right now, but I think the real breakthrough, like the genuine honest to God breakthrough I had, was only like a couple of years ago. And I would say this was like, 2 years into what I would call the beginning of my recovery process. But I don't think it was recovery. I think like the relapses are just too obvious for me to be like, yeah, I was like actually recovering. I think I was just sort of pretending. But the honest to God breakthrough I had was when I realized that like the only person that could really make a change in my life was me. And ultimately the impulses and all of this kind of this stuff in my head was like, could I help that? No, it's a mental illness. Like I can't just get rid of it.
Can't switch it up.
But I can choose whether to act on it. And the problem is that before I was thinking of it the other way around, where I was like, I want to get rid of the mental illness. And a lot of my therapists were saying to me like, oh, you don't really, like, it's not your fault. Like it was your ex-boyfriends, or it was society, or it was all these other factors that were pushing me to do the things in my life that I was doing, like the under-eating or the obsessing or the over-exercising. I mean, I was living this lifestyle. This was a full lifestyle. Every waking moment of my life was informed by this like mental scape that I had built up in my head.
Yeah.
And then I just went, oh, wow, it's actually not that way around at all. Like I have full control over my own agency.
It's so powerful to realize that.
It's so powerful. And I think that's really missing from the conversation, because I think we think, oh, these girls, and it's obviously not just girls, but like we say these girls have got themselves into this mess. There's no way that their sense of agency will get them out of it. And it's like, well, yeah, it is. Like if we're that capable of ruining our lives, like we're going to be capable of unruining them as well. And I think also this idea of like me trying to exorcise this mental illness from my brain and from my life was totally impossible. And so it wasn't until I accepted that this was always going to be part of who I am, you know, like circling back now to your question. Yeah, I live with this now, and I live with it in a really shameless way, because otherwise I just don't think I would be able to recover if I didn't fully accept that this is who I am.
I think that's so interesting what you're saying, that was your breakthrough moment, realizing that you, even though you can't control, you know, how your mind thinks, what your mind thinks, you can control your actions. You can control whether you act on it or not. You have some kind of autonomy of your life. Because a lot, this I haven't really experienced in clinical work, just because of a lot of the people I work with are very young and maybe haven't gotten to the point where they can realize that. Some of them have, but a lot of, I've heard this with several friends of mine who've gone through eating disorders, men as well, actually, where that was the changing point for them after a long, you know, years and years of treatment of it, you know, hearing what you heard from therapists, that, you know, it's not your fault. This is, you know, the illness talking, this is the illness doing it, and sort of, and I can understand, you know, trying to separate the person from the illness, but what really, you know, a huge part of recovery, I think, is making that choice, that it is your choice and not, you know, and I don't think that happens as easily if you're told, you know, that's the disease and you're not that you're somewhere. Yeah.
I really don't like the whole separate the disease from the person thing. Like I just, because it was asking me to divorce like 10 years of my life, you know, and I think that's why I find stuff like AA so inspiring, because it's not about ignoring it, it's about accepting it and embracing it. And that was massively life-changing. I've always followed, actually, I don't know if people like podcasts, I've always followed this podcaster called Rich Roll, who talks a lot about his own recovery from alcoholism. And he has a mantra, and I'm not really big into mantras, do you know what I mean? I find them a bit fucking stupid.
I love a good
I just
mantra.
think like,
sorry.
I know. Well, you're going to have to start sharing a mantra every single episode then.
I'll try. I really like cringy ones though, but we'll see. I'll try. Let me hear it.
Yeah, his mantra is very simple. It is mood follows action.
I like it.
So I think if you are constantly waiting for yourself to be in the right frame of mind to do something, you'll never get there. Like you have to actually act first. And if you are acting towards a positive thing, then you'll probably feel better. I mean, there's obviously, as always, exceptions to this. Like if you are getting constant feedback that you are not enjoying something, maybe stop. Do you know what I mean? Like it's okay to actually accept that you are having a shit time and that maybe this isn't for you. But I think I spent so long just kind of being like, especially once I got out of that really hyper focused anorexic mindset and I tried to like put my life back on track. I just lost motivation for everything, because my motivation before had always been very simple, and that was to be perfect in everything.
Very simple, you know, just
a very
perfect
simple,
at everything. Yeah, it's not huge.
Very simple mindset, you know. And you know what, Maria? I was so perfect. I was like straight A's. I mean, I'm not going to like list all the things that like I had as my rubric, because I don't want to like trigger other people, but you know what? Like, truthfully, was I happy? Sometimes. Was I miserable? A lot of the time. It wasn't even like misery. It was more like, because I think the misery came later when I started to try and adjust back into like being a normal person.
That's when you felt the misery.
Yeah, absolutely. I really
It's very
enjoyed being
interesting.
anorexia.
Because I think that surely that's a huge hindrance for a lot of people in recovery. The
Yes.
misery that comes with recovery.
It sucks. It sucks because everything that you used to value about yourself, you have to dismantle and then rebuild. Like a lot of the stuff that I used to value in myself is now also the stuff I value in myself. It's just not centered around restriction or hyper-discipline or being as thin as possible. Like, I'm not infallible, you know, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be infallible. I get upset all the time. And yes, I have a level of resilience and yes, I'm self-sufficient and all this kind of stuff. But I think the most challenging part of all of this recovery process is like, I just kind of did it out by myself.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I had a couple of therapists and stuff. But as I say, never went to inpatient, never did any of these things. Oh God, I remember, and this is kind of brings us full circle, and perhaps this is what we'll end on today. But yeah, this brings us full circle because I remember when I first pitched this idea of the podcast to you.
Yeah.
So I had just watched a comedy special with John Mulaney called Baby J. And the whole comedy special is about the intervention that his friends gave him when he was like addicted to many things. I think the main one being coke. And he made a whole special about it. And I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was great. But I remember being so sad because I was jealous of his intervention. I was like, count your blessings, John Mulaney, because some of us did it like, and I know, I think that's the wrong, that is genuinely not what I felt. I was just very profoundly sad. I was so happy for him. I don't know if he's better. Like the same way that when I read Matthew Perry's memoir, I was like, I don't know if you are clean.
Yeah.
Like seriously, I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know. These are other people's lives. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, damn boy, like you have no idea how lucky you are to have friends that can give you a intervention. I'm not saying that I didn't have good friends or anything like that, but I'm saying that I had isolated myself to the extent that when I decided to get better, I just had to do it on my own. I never went to inpatient. I never did any of these things. When I stopped like making myself sick, I did that on my own. Swear it almost killed me. And it's funny to look back at it now, but like, would I change that? Because I do think it made me the person I am, you know, every day when I wake up, and this is again, like, I guess you could even relate this back to faith to a certain extent, but like every day I wake up and go, okay, this is great. I'm still alive. You know, this is a wonderful thing. And I believe that today could be a great day. Like, even if it's not that great, you know, it's still great. It's still better than yesterday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I got that. I got there without any like specific help from either my family or my friends or medical professionals. And that's not to dunk on any of those people, but it's, yeah. And I think the reason I wanted to do the podcast wasn't to like moan about this, but to like take the piss out of it and just be and just acknowledge how like completely ridiculous this situation was and all the mistakes I made. And the fact that at the other end of it, if anybody's listening to this going, oh God, that sounds exactly like me, like the way that she is describing herself 5 years ago, that sounds like me right now. I just want you to know that at the other end of that, you are going to be such a funny bitch. You have no idea how great your life is going to be.
On the plus side,
when you're eating enough calories, your brain's like firing off jokes all the time. Shit, man. I used to make that joke all the time, actually. I was like, I remember when I graduated university, I put a caption like, imagine what I could have done if I'd eaten carbs.
Well, you did that? You're like...
I think if you scroll back far enough in my Instagram, I believe there is a picture of me holding, or maybe I archived it, but I think there was a...
I love that though. I love that. That's
holding my dissertation. Oh no. Yeah, no, not that one. Where is it? Yes. Okay. So this is July 10th, 2019. I'm holding my first class undergraduate certificate. And I've captioned it with, imagine what I could have done if I'd eaten enough protein. And all I'm saying is I didn't hide it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I was taking the piss even then.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking about. Like, okay, even then.
I was making jokes about it all the time. I wasn't.
But all throughout uni?
Yes. I was very open about the fact that, like, because I was vegan as well. So I was always making like stupid vegan jokes, and I was really into yoga and all this kind of like traditional wellness eating disorder crap, you know. Not saying that yoga is like about an eating disorder. I'm saying that like the kind of the co-opting of it by the wellness community like can definitely veer into kind of unhealthy territory.
Yeah.
I was not hiding this shit. Do you know what I mean? What I was hiding was the fact that I was struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't hiding the actual disorder at all. Like,
but do you
anybody
think
who's
people notice then? You know, do you think people? I think people are too afraid to approach those subjects, even if it's very obvious and you know the person's even saying it themselves.
Well, this is the same question that I asked you at the beginning, which is like, did you notice? Like, what was your impression of me at the beginning? Because this is always what plagues my mind. Is like. Yeah. I did not hide this very well.
Hello, it's Maria here. Thanks for listening to today's podcast episode. If you want to check out the resources regarding what we talked about today, check out the show notes. Bye.